Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Compassion and Courage, Conversations in Healthcare. I'm your host, Marcus Engel, and with me as always is the Hotness. Hi.
Hello.
And this is the podcast where we teach compassionate communication, provide perspective, and inspire resilience. And today, we can talk about all of those things because it has been an eventful time around the old Engel household here.
I was going to ask why you're not smiling so much today.
Yeah, why I'm a little more stoic than usual. Subdued. That's a nice word. It's almost like we're writers or something. But so we a couple of weeks ago had a major trauma that occurred in our family, and it occurred to me. So indeed. So I'm still processing this trauma. So I'm going to ask you to please bear with me and give me a little grace. I am a professional storyteller apparently, but this is one I'm still working through. So, as it starts out, we were home one evening a couple weeks ago, and Marveline is hanging out in the bedroom. I'm out back with James, and as we're coming in the house, as I'm bringing James in the house for the night, I can tell that he's got something in his mouth, and I don't know what it is, but I know he shouldn't have it in his mouth. I know it's not a nylabone. I know it's not a Kong. It's not one of his toys. So I take it out of his mouth, and I didn't exactly know what it was, but I knew it was old, and I knew it just needed to be thrown away in the trash because I didn't know what it was. As it turns out, we figured out later that it was an old birdhouse that had been left in our backyard by the previous owner, and somewhere along the way it had blown out of the tree or something. So that's what James picked up, and he was going to bring it in the house because he is a retriever. And so I took it away from him, and I come inside the house, walk inside, and I get about 20 steps into the house, and I'm kind of looking at this thing, feeling over it, and I'm like, what is this round, flat thing wrapped around this ceramic plastic piece? And just about the moment of realization that, oh my God, it's a snake, boom, that dude had his fangs in my right hand. And the pain, as you can imagine, was enormous. And I screamed like a child. I screamed
like someone who'd just been bitten by a snake.
Yeah.
Right here, for you guys wondering where on his hand, it was right here.
Right here on my hand, if you're watching on YouTube. If you're not, I explained to my cousin, who's a big music fan as well, I said, if you were going to be like Jimi Hendrix and you stand next to a mountain and chop it down with the edge of your hand, that's exactly where the snake bite occurred.
That's true.
So I screamed and I shook this thing off of my hand. And while I'm screaming, Marveline comes running in from the bedroom, and I'm telling her, I got bit by a snake. I got bit by a snake. She's asking, where is it? I have no idea. I am blind. I don't know where this snake is. I don't know anything about this snake. But he's loose in the house now, right? And so we had to first subdue the snake, right? And that's where Marveline came to the rescue.
Well, honestly, there's like 8 different things that go through your head all at once. And you all understand this if you've been in that moment of shock. But I knew I had to get James out of there and away. I knew I had to keep you from getting bit again. I knew instantly the paramedics were going to need to see the snake to describe what kind it is, because we do live in Florida and there's a lot of different good snakes, bad snakes, the whole thing. You don't want it to even bite you. I knew inerrantly that if we did not find that snake, a for sale sign was going on the house instantly, and I was never stepping foot back in this house. We knew we had to wash your hand. We knew we had to call 911. It's like all of these things at once, and prioritizing them becomes just kind of a jumble.
But getting rid of the snake out of the house so it could not strike anybody else was priority number one. We have to subdue the attacker, right?
Correct.
To use law enforcement terms.
We have to find the snake. But
We did.
Yeah.
And with the help of Marveline and our next door neighbors, our wonderful next door neighbors, they helped the snake cross the Rainbow Bridge, and I'm locked in the bathroom with water running over my hand. At this point, we do also need to mention that this snake, we didn't exactly know what kind it was. We later found out it's a water moccasin, aka cottonmouth. Cottonmouths and water moccasins are the same kind of snake. There are there are less than half a dozen water moccasin bites annually nationally. There's no reason why people should get bit by a water moccasin unless you touch one. And why would you touch one? There's no human reason to ever touch one unless it's a mistake like I made.
that is the truth. We know more about this, about snakes and venom and all the things than we ever wanted to know, and then we won't hope you never have to find out.
So we've got the snake dead now. We've got 911 on the phone. The paramedics are on their way. Marveline runs around the house and has to now get James kenneled up so that he won't run out the door when the paramedics get here. I'm trying to keep my hand washed, and paramedics arrive. They take a look at the snake. They realize immediately that it's venomous and that it's a water moccasin. They said, okay, we're going to take a little ride to the hospital now. My hand was in enormous pain. It was already swelling by this point. And they ran lights and sirens on me to the nearest emergency room, which, if you're here in Florida, happens to be Advent Florida East Hospital, and which is near my house. And they, there in the emergency room, administered the first of several doses of anti-venom. And wow, I guess I start to not remember a lot of it because I want to purposefully block it out of my memory, but also because I started getting painkillers by the gallon.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness.
But
yeah.
honestly, I always thought anti-venom was just a little shot they carried on the ambulance,
Yeah.
kind of like they would Narcan, which
Right.
we've all seen on TV, and how quickly it counteracts the bad things, and you feel better.
Yeah, think of it like a shot of penicillin. Nope, nope. It took a
No
whole
idea.
pharmacy worth of people and ingredients. I believe there were 4 or 5 people at least mixing up the medicine, as they said.
I know. They said it took about 10 different things that they mixed together in the actual ER. They don't carry it around. They
Right.
mix it according to the type of snake, etc. And they told me to follow you. I wanted to get in the ambulance, but they wouldn't let me. They said, we're going to go fast, which I knew already was bad just by how fast they scooped you up and took you, because a lot of times paramedics give kind of a slow, gentle evaluation, and they're careful. They scooped you up so fast, and they told me, they said, do not run red lights or follow us as fast as we're going, but we'll see you in the ER. And I was right behind you. I mean, I ran out. I was in my PJs. I ran out the door, and by the time I walked into the ER, they had given you one IV that was fully open. They were trying to give you a second one because you needed 2. They had already started all kinds of pain medication that you were still not relieved of all of your pain. They had already started this process. There was no dilly-dallying around, shall we say.
There was no screwing around with the snake bite. I want to tell a real quick compassion story about one of the paramedics. As we're rushing to the ER, we rounded a corner, and my body kind of shifted over. They've got me strapped on the gurney in the back of the ambulance, and they've got me strapped in, so I knew I wasn't going to fall off. But I certainly felt like that. What's the centrifuge effect or
Like
whatever?
that
Right, like the fair
fair
ride.
ride.
Yeah.
I hate those.
Yeah, I know. I hear you. You'll throw up in your mouth and it'll stick in your face. Oh, did I just say that? So this paramedic, as we're crossing this corner, I'm leaning a little far to his side, and he just gently puts his hand on me and kind of makes a firm place so that I wouldn't tip over any further. And he didn't really need to do it. It was just a small gesture of comfort, but it meant a lot to me in that moment. I almost burst into tears when that happened.
I didn't know that.
So I want to thank that medic. At some point, I'm going to go track these guys down. As we've learned, these snake bites are pretty rare, so it's not like they're not going to remember. So here we are at the ER. I'm getting heavy dose pain medication, and they're asking me pretty scary questions like, "Are you short of breath?" No. Are you having any dizziness? No. Are you nauseous? No. Are you having any kind of heart palpitations? No. Chest pain? No. And the questions that they're asking me are the kind of things that you would ask someone going in for a heart attack or a stroke. And I didn't have any of those. No, just my arm, just my hand. And it was swelling up huge at this time. They keep giving me drugs, keep giving me drugs. Marlene is now there, and I think at some point one of the nurses assured me that I was not going to die. Because if I was going to die, I would have already been showing symptoms. If I were allergic to the venom and it was going to cause a heart attack or a stroke, I already would have had it. And then, after you learn that you're not going to die, that's whenever they say, okay, we're going to take you to another hospital to treat you. Whew, okay, so we're going to transfer. And apparently, again, when you have a snake bite, there's no waiting around. You don't wait in lines. You don't wait to have conversations. You just go. And they ran lights and sirens on me to the second facility, where I immediately went into surgery. There was no waiting around. There was no going through the ER. We just immediately went into surgery to try to save my right hand. That was very much a possibility, because as we learned later, something like 40% of people who get a snake bite like this end up with a permanent disability. Right?
That's truth. And when you arrived, of course, I was behind you again, following you to the hospital. When you arrived, the surgeon was waiting for you. All of anesthesia was waiting for you. The OR was open for you. You really just kind of swished in, and they stood there and said, okay, we need you to sign the consent forms for him. And as I'm doing it, they're going over with you. You have to understand this can cause loss of digits, loss of mobility in your hand, yada, yada, loss of hand. And I'm going, I'm signing, agreeing to this, but knowing absolutely there was no choice. Your hand looked like if you remember taking a doctor's glove or a nurse glove and blowing them up till they look like balloons, that is an understatement for how your hand was looking. And what we understand now, I think, is that the venom instantly starts to work on your muscles and the muscles in the area, but the swelling affects all the nerves and cuts off does what you would imagine if you cut a nerve off. So
the swelling is so big that they have to open up my hand in several different places to release the swelling, including across the carpal tunnel, which I guess is kind of a good thing that I'll never have to have carpal tunnel syndrome
That's what he said.
surgery on that hand.
So you had a fasciotomy,
Fasciotomy, right?
which,
And
if you don't know, is big slits in I think 5 places down his arm that they have to leave open so the swelling has a place to go rather than continuing to press on those nerves.
yeah, so this meant that after surgery, I was in the hospital for 5 nights.
Yeah, 6 days,
5 nights, 6
5 nights.
days. It was it was overall a really great caregiving experience. It's kind of hard for us to not notice all the things that we notice about patient interaction and compassionate communication. But I promise you, we were not there on a fact-finding mission. We were there getting treatment.
We weren't secret shoppers.
No, we were not secret shopping the hospital. Now, I did learn a lot. Absolutely, I learned a lot,
Absolutely.
and stories that I'm going to get to share at later times. But keeping in mind, this did not just happen to the hand. After the hand, it starts moving up my arm and up my elbow and up my bicep and up into my shoulder until my right arm was the size of my thigh. Each
Literally.
part of my right arm, the forearm and the upper arm, were both like the size of my thigh. Just absolutely huge. Now, that lasted for maybe 48 hours until the swelling started to decrease. And it was pretty amazing that over the next few days, the swelling did decrease a significant amount. To this day, I still have stitches in the back of my hand. I'll get those sutures out in a few days, and hopefully, we're not dealing with any kind of loss of mobility or flexibility or dexterity or whatever those words are. I'm just so grateful. I am just so grateful. I have a hand. As you can imagine, losing a hand is a pretty big fear for a person who's already had sight loss. So I told Marveline at one point, I was like, my God, I wouldn't be able to type. I wouldn't be able to use a phone. I wouldn't be able to play guitar. I would not be able to touch my wife. And that's when it started sinking in, just how big of a trauma that this could have been. So we are feeling awfully grateful, awfully lucky at this point.
We are indeed. And they had prepared us for 2 weeks of hospitalization, up to 4 surgeries, skin grafts. And we were out in 6 days because your body is amazing. The way that it heals.
I was going to say, I have dad bod for a 48-year-old guy. My body is not amazing.
Well, the important stuff like healing, and then getting help so quickly from the neighbors coming over to all the way to each healthcare professional that we interacted with who helped make it bearable and tolerable.
The medics, the transport teams that all work just absolutely just clicked. Well-oiled machine, as it should be.
And the medication.
The medications.
The fact that they have anti-venom, and you had several rounds of it given over the course of the next 24, 48 hours to counteract what it was doing in your body.
We're not done yet. No. We're not totally done yet. There's still the possibility of more surgery. There's a possibility of more occupational therapy and potentially loss in sensation in some parts of the hand and arm. I'm not expecting that. I'm hoping and crossing my fingers and expecting to make a full recovery, but there are still some fears and concerns that we're dealing with.
Yeah, snake bites are real. I knew they were dangerous. I grew up in Florida. I knew you don't want to mess with those. But I never really understood what that meant
Because
until we had one in our house.
do you know how many snake bites happen? Not that many. And
It's usually a rattler.
a rattler, right, or copperhead, and they say that those are not as bad as water moccasins. One of the things too, I learned that I had to be on tons of extra antibiotics because water moccasins are water snakes, and that means that they swim around in potentially infected or nasty water, and that means that their bite can be more dangerous. So lucky me, right? Lucky me.
Right. I think one of your IVs was strictly almost around the clock IV antibiotics just to keep those away.
Yeah. A lot of
The bad
medication.
guys away.
A lot of medication. So what's our big takeaway from this? Don't pick up snakes, okay? But if you do pick up a snake, don't bring it in your house.
Don't bring it in your house. Don't dare somebody. Don't mess around, and maybe move. But we live in Florida. There's
Snakes everywhere. So wherever we move, there's still going to be snakes. Unless we go to like, I don't know, Nome, Alaska. Do you think they have snakes there?
I don't know, but I'm open to suggestions. There were first few days we were in shock. We were
Sure.
sitting there, are a shockish type, and every now and then you would look up and go, "I got bit by a snake," and inside I'm doing the same thing. Of is this really happening?
Is this really happening? Right.
It was
I remember asking you in the ER, am I in shock?
You did.
And I didn't know if I was in shock, but I was trying to process everything that was going on, which is, of course, like the drinking from the proverbial fire hose.
Yeah, it was. You go straight into action until all the action you can do is done, and then you're left with the what?
And so I think one of my favorite things about this whole experience that there's such a show of compassion happens to be from our next door neighbors for not only coming and helping you get the snake killed, but also because they immediately said to you, Marveline, no, you go to the hospital with him. We'll take care of James. And I know these folks are dog lovers. There's dog has always been just across the fence from my dogs. And they kept James the whole time while I was in the hospital and got him fed and got him walked. And I can't express enough gratitude to the kind of people who just see the need and step in immediately. Just see the need and step in immediately, not waiting to be invited in or asking permission. They just do it. And I feel like that was such an act of compassion towards both of us that at this time when we really need to focus on my hand, my health, my healing, my surgeries, that we knew that we did not have to worry that James was not well taken care of during our absence.
It was extraordinary, and they would send pictures and little updates of him being cute, and it made me think about how many times I have told someone, well, if you need anything, let me know. I think that's a common thing to say to people we care about or people in our community. But the people who they know what you need even when you don't. The people who just brought food to the hospital before we asked, who just would show up with a Starbucks or Greek food or clean underwear. I literally wore the same pajamas the whole 6 days. I mean, to the cafeteria, to the gift shop, while we're in the waiting room, because you had 2 surgeries while we were there. The sitting there interacting with doctors, I'm in the same clothes. And thankfully, didn't have to wear the same underwear the whole time. And neither did you.
Neither did I.
It was just the people who just show up with a toothbrush. Because I know the hospital provides those things, but having your own where you kind of smell like yourself, and it's amazing how much comfort that gives. instead of just saying, what do you need? And I keep saying, I'm going to be sure I switch with people local that may be still in shock and not know what they need. And that I'm going to make sure more often I just reach out and do what I know someone will need. Make sure there's, dinner in the fridge before they get home and stuff like that.
It's a proactive approach as opposed to a reactive approach. It's proactive in actually, instead of saying, let me know if I can do anything to help, which is a beautiful gesture and a beautiful thought, but it's also very hard to sometimes for people to pick up the phone and articulate what they need because they're still going through such an event. And so I am so grateful for all of the supportive messages that we got, not just from people in our neighborhood. We have not told a lot of people about this either. This is only the second time I'm telling this story. The first time was just yesterday in front of an audience. And so, like I said, we're still processing this whole event too. But I know that in addition to the gratitude that we have for the paramedics and the nurses and the docs and everybody that was in the hospital and our neighbors, etc. I have to say that we just keep kind of going back to this, but glossing over the fact that I spent 5 nights in the hospital and Marveline slept in a uncomfortable hospital chair for 4 of those nights. And we have a pretty strong rule in our family that nobody stays in the hospital alone. And I feel guilty when she has to stay there for 4 nights in a uncomfortable hospital chair. But I also know that the same would go for me, that if she were in the hospital for that extended period of time, there's nowhere else I would want to be except right there. I couldn't handle knowing that you're in the hospital and I'm at home without being there to advocate for you and to help you, to listen to you, to hold your hand. And you doing that for me, again, just it's such a beautiful gift that I know that I sometimes take for granted, but thank you.
You could not have pried me away or bribed me away. Well, maybe with a different house.
Yeah.
But we love our house. I'm kidding about that. But you couldn't have pried me away from there. And I'm so grateful that you're home and doing brilliantly. And I love your body and its amazing healing properties. And the people who did know that have been prayerful and supportive of us, thank you for that. And the best thing I know to do is to pay that forward with being sure that I'm an actively compassionate person.
Proactively.
Yep.
Yep.
That works.
So if you have questions about any of this, if there's other questions that we can answer, we're still, like I said, working through some of the trauma. I'm sure that we'll talk about it some more on future episodes. But if you have any kind of specific questions, feel free to drop those in the comments. Also, please feel free to share this with anybody that you know who has survived any type of animal attack. I've been talking with a couple of people who are also survivors of animal attacks, and I hope that you'll share this with them. It's a small group of us out there, kind of a exclusive club. So I hope you'll share that with us, and I hope that you will subscribe to the podcast and share and subscribe and interact in all those ways that help get the message out about compassion and courage. Again, this is Marcus Engel and the Hotness with me. Hi, bye.
Hi, bye. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us, and thanks for bearing witness to my story about this snake bite. We love you all, appreciate you all, and again, this is the Compassion and Courage podcast, Conversations in Healthcare, the place where we teach compassionate communication, provide perspective, and inspire resilience. Thank you all. See you next time.